Welcome to another hour of CBS Sports HQ. Jeremy St. Louis, happy to have you along with us. With the NBA draft just over 24 hours away, we are going on the clock, presented by Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE, for the next hour to make all 30 first-round picks. And let's introduce you to the guys who will be making and analyzing those picks. We simply call him the coach, NBA champion Avery Johnson, a man who has talent and knows talent. Next up, Kyle Boone. He's been covering college basketball for CBS Sports HQ for 6 years now and been mock drafting for just as long. He's lost count of the number of mock drafts he's done this season. And last but never least, CBSSports.com basketball writer Colin Ward-Henninger. Colin has been breaking down NBA team needs, and this is his first appearance on the mock draft. So curious to see how Colin's picks will play out. So with that, let's get into it, gentlemen. We have done 5 mock drafts here on CBS Sports HQ. Every single one had Chet Holmgren going number 1 overall. Colin, you have first dibs. Who are you taking?
With the first pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Orlando Magic select Jabari Smith Jr. out of Auburn. You throw me in my first mock draft on HQ, and I'm taking a different player. But I think all signs are indicating that the Magic are going to go with Smith. To me, I look at NBA fits, and for the Magic, this is exactly what they need. They need someone who can put the ball in the basket, and with Jabari Smith Jr.'s size, his ability to shoot the ball, exploit mismatches by shooting over the top. He also plays, will be going to a team that has a lot of ball handlers, a lot of playmakers in Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, and Franz Wagner. So I think, if they evaluate the top 3 prospects relatively equally, Smith makes a lot of sense for me for the Magic simply because of his fit and his ability to score the ball.
Well, there's no surprise here in the sense any one of these 3 guys, Smith, Holmgren, Carroll, any one of these guys can go first in the draft. So I'm okay with this pick. I had Jabari Smith. I had a game on CBS Sports Network when they played at St. Louis early in the year, and to see him up close and personal, I can only think of Kevin Garnett. This guy's got the same length, the shooting ability. I think he'll be able to shoot the 3 better than KG shot it during his NBA career. But the most critical thing about his game is he can switch all 5 positions, especially with his pick and roll defense, his lateral movement. So I'm okay with this pick. It's not really a surprise. I probably would have taken Chet Holmgren with the number 1 pick. But again, you're talking about a guy that has a huge upside, and I think he'll fit right in and really try to help elevate the Magic.
Yeah, I'm with you, Coach. I think at number 1 for the Magic, this is not who I would pick, but I certainly can see why they would select Jabari Smith Jr. At his size, 6'10", he is an elite shooting threat. Shot 42% from the three-point line last season, rated out as one of the best catch-and-shoot threats in all of college basketball as a true freshman. Now, last season, the Magic rated 28th among all 30 NBA teams in three-point shooting. He adds a dynamic as kind of a plug-and-play three-point shooting threat. His defense, I think, is very versatile, can guard multiple positions. He's a very mobile player. And then on top of that, he's a full year younger than Chet Holmgren, 6 months younger than Paolo Banchero. So if you're in a vacuum kind of looking and evaluating some of this year's top prospects, I think there's a chance that, if you're kind of splitting hairs between Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero, you look at Jabari Smith and say, this guy's so young and he's already so good. There's so much leg room for him to grow and mature his game. I think at number 1, this is a very safe pick for the Magic.
I love the fact that Colin kind of went against the tide. Chet Holmgren's been the guy, but he takes Jabari Smith. Jabari Smith, the favorite to go number 1 overall, according to Caesar Sportsbook, at -260. All right, so Jabari is off the board. The Oklahoma City Thunder are up next. Avery, you've picked Chet at the 1 spot before. Is that who you're going with here?
Yeah, with the number 2 pick, the Oklahoma City Thunder select Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. I think this would be a steal for Oklahoma City Thunder if they land Chet in this situation. I think, even though Jabari Smith would deservedly go 1, Chet Holmgren is 7-foot rim protector. This guy's got, I think, the highest ceiling of anybody in the draft. I love the way he runs the floor. He can shoot the 3, but those weak side blocks, especially with the dribble penetration and points in the paint in the NBA, that could be very useful. I think he has unbelievable range for a guy his age. He's got really good hands, but just a silky smooth shooter. Obviously, he's got to work a little bit on his body. But if you would tell Sam Presti that they would be able to land Chet Holmgren in his spot, he'll be a happy man.
Yeah, and there's obviously some questions, right, about his skinny frame. He's 7 foot tall, but he's just under 200 pounds. And this is a frame for prospects that we really don't see very much in the NBA. But at Gonzaga, he was one of the best shot blockers in all of college basketball. Top 10 last season in block rate. He was very efficient on both ends of the floor as well. 97th percentile. Scoring around the basket, and then on defense was 97th percentile defending around the basket. There's just a lot to like about Chet Holmgren's game. He can step out and hit threes. He's really efficient around the rim. And I think most interestingly, he's someone who can grab rebounds. He can run the break. He can kind of create like a wing, a really special talent who I think has #1 pick potential. You get him at #2 for the Thunder, add him next to Josh Giddey and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 2 really electric backcourt talents. I think OKC really can kind of expedite its rebuild, adding Chet Holmgren to the mix.
Yeah, to me, it really makes sense here. I actually have Chet as my #1 prospect, even though I took Jabari Smith with the #1 pick. I think what Chet is going to be able to do is absolutely tantalizing. With his defensive instincts, I talked to a guy who trains prospects for the NBA, and he said that Chet's defensive instincts are just off the charts, and that is something that you don't usually find. So in terms of the fit for the Thunder, look, they're not going to be competing anytime soon, so they're not necessarily looking for pieces that fit, but they do have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey in the backcourt. You pair them with a big man, whatever position you want to say that Chet Holmgren is going to play in the NBA, he is going to be some sort of big man. So you pair him with a good backcourt, you have a really bright future in OKC. So I think, obviously there are the questions about the frame. It's just something that NBA scouts are probably a little bit scared of. You look at the rules in the NBA, the way that the big man has kind of, he's not going to get posted up by bigger guys. I think he'll be just fine. So to me, Holmgren makes a lot of sense for the Thunder at #2.
Holmgren, 4th in the nation in blocks, led the West Coast Conference in blocks, rebounding, and field goal percentage. All right, next up, the Houston Rockets. People saying they have the easiest decision to make. They get whoever is left with Jabari Smith and Chet Holmgren gone. Kyle, make the pick.
Yeah, I'm going to take the last of the big 3 in this draft, and I'm going to select Paolo Banchero. The Rockets traded Christian Wood, their starting power forward, on the same day that Paolo Banchero came to Houston for a workout. Is it a coincidence? I kind of think it is. The writing feels like it's on the wall here with Banchero likely landing in Houston, and I would really like the fit. He's a really good playmaker, especially for his size at 6'10". He excels scoring in the mid-range. He can shoot it from 3. I think he's the most dynamic offensive weapon among all prospects in this draft class. I think there's a clear top 3 in this draft with Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero. And so Banchero slips to #3 here. I think the Rockets make an easy selection. Add Banchero to, last year's #2 overall pick, Jalen Green. They've got a really dynamic inside-out duo that I think they can build around long-term.
Yeah, to me, I really like Banchero's fit in Houston. You talk about comparing him with Jalen Green, like Boone just mentioned. This is a guy who can not only be the screen setter in a pick and roll, but he can be the ball handler in a pick and roll, and maybe invert those pick and rolls. Some of the stuff you see with guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, not saying he's going to be that good, but he has the versatility to handle the ball on the offensive side. Of course, there's questions about his defense, questions about his shooting, but the Rockets are in a position where they don't need to worry about that. They can get him with their development staff, kind of work on those aspects of his game. But when you look at Banchero's film, to me, it jumps off the page, jumps off the screen as a #1 pick type of prospect, type of talent. It's just about kind of harnessing those other aspects of his game. But what he can do naturally at his size is not something that you see often. So I think the Rockets will be more than happy to take Banchero at #3.
Yeah, I agree. And, Paolo Banchero has the most NBA-ready body out of anybody that's going to be drafted in the top 5. This guy, he's a handful. He's 250 pounds. He can run the floor. I love his court vision. He's an underrated athlete. I think he's an underrated shooter, and his game is going to transfer. But I think the physicality of the NBA, and you can see it, especially with teams in the playoffs. You can't handle the physicality and be strong with the ball. You saw Jason Tatum have some issues with turnovers, 100 turnovers in the playoffs. I think this guy, if you get him in an NBA playoff series with his type of physique and athleticism, I think he'll be able to translate, even in his first year in the NBA, even though he's going to a team that's not going to make the playoffs.
Well, and you look at the odds too. Banchero minus 330, the favorite to go third overall in the 2022 draft. And that was one of 2 first-round picks for the Rockets. We're going to see them again at number 17 as you take a look at the odds to be number 1 overall, plus 280. Next up, let's go to the Sacramento Kings. They are at 4. They were in this spot back in 2009. They took Rookie of the Year Tyreke Evans at that point. Kyle, let's go back to you with pick number 4.
Yeah, JSL, there's a clear and dramatic drop-off in talent after number 4. And so I'm going to take Jaden Ivey, who I think is the number 1 prospect in this class, at number 4. I think there's some fit questions, some concerns about how Jaden Ivey would fit in Sacramento next to Davion Mitchell, who they drafted last year, and De'Aaron Fox, who is their number 1 point guard option. But I think if you're the Kings, you kind of just take the best player available and you hope that somehow things work itself out. Remember, the Kings have made the mistake in the past of kind of preferring to take someone who would maybe fit better, but maybe isn't the best talent. They drafted Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. That has come back to haunt them. So I think Jaden Ivey at number 4, if he is still on the board, he is easily the best remaining talent. I would take him. He's an explosive athlete, tornado-like weapon who can really slice to the rim, a really good creator. Love his long-term potential. I think he can be an all-star as kind of a combo guard in the NBA. He was really one of the best college players in college hoops last season as a sophomore at Purdue. So at number 4, I'm fine taking Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned Davion Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, and because of this pick, which I love this pick for Sacramento, especially with new coach Mike Brown, you could potentially see De'Aaron Fox moved. I think he's run its course. His time has run its course in Sacramento. They haven't made it to the playoffs. They haven't. If you can't make it to the playoffs, you're not going to be able to advance. I think this is a kid that has kind of that Ja Morant type of splash and athleticism, being able to attack the rim. I don't think you need three guys, 3-point guards on the roster. So because of this move, I could very well see De'Aaron Fox. But I'm loving this pick for Sacramento. It's a fresh start with a new coach. I know Mike Brown's, you've seen De'Aaron Fox enough coaching right next door in Golden State. So I don't think this kid is going there to back up De'Aaron Fox. I think he's going there to take that position, and maybe Sacramento will find a new home for Fox.
And Jaden Ivey, the favorite to go 4th overall at minus 150, according to Caesars Sportsbook. All right, he's the 4th Big Ten player in the last 30 years to record 600 points, 175 rebounds, 100 assists, 30 steals, and 20 blocks. Also on that list, by the way, a guy by the name of Draymond Green. Next, the Detroit Pistons. How do they build a core around Cade Cunningham? So, Avery, answer that. You're on the clock.
Yeah, with the 5th pick, the Detroit Pistons select Ben Mathurin out of Arizona. I love this pick for Detroit. And just what you said, Jeremy, pairing him up with Cade Cunningham. Both guys can pass, dribble, and shoot. Again, I called 2 of Ben's games this year in the NCAA tournament. It's unlimited range, silky smooth shooter, finishes well around the basket. Love his size. Man, he's a freak athlete, can really play above the rim. He'll be able to create his own shot. A nice pick and roll player. So I'm loving this pick for Detroit as Dwayne Casey continues to try to rebuild this team and make the Detroit Pistons relevant again.
Yeah, I'm so glad Coach picked this guy at number 5. I've been in love with Ben Mathurin ever since last draft cycle when he decided to return to Arizona. Everything Coach mentioned, I mean, this is the perfect person to put next to Cade Cunningham in Detroit. You're looking for someone who can not only play off the ball next to Cade Cunningham with his shooting ability, but also be able to be a secondary creator when Cunningham's on the bench or when he gets double teamed. Mathurin can go into a pick and roll by himself or attack a closeout. And then you look in transition. This team is going to be so much fun if they add a guy like Mathurin. He gets out on the break. You saw those windmill dunks. Just an explosive athlete. And then you talk about his makeup. This guy is a high motor. He's been through the NBA Academy in Mexico City, coming from Montreal. So he's been in kind of a pro-style lifestyle for a while now. I think this guy, he's one of my favorite players in the draft, and I would love to see him go to the Pistons.
Certainly a guy that Canadian basketball fans will have their eye on if he gets picked there. All right, the Pacers find themselves in the top 10 for a pick for the first time in a dozen years. Colin, you're up.
Yeah, I think the Pacers with the number 6 pick, they're going to select Keegan Murray. This is a guy who's done a whole lot of different types of things at Iowa, right? He can put the ball in the basket. He can put the ball on the floor. He's a pretty switchable defender. So if you're talking about the Pacers and where he fits in, you've got Tyrese Halliburton in the backcourt, kind of running the show. You don't know if they're going to keep Miles Turner, but if they do, he's still very young. They have him playing center. Keegan Murray's a great guy to put next to both of those guys because of his versatility. And then if you want to play Miles Turner out around the three-point line where he likes to play, Keegan Murray was a really good post-up player. And I know that's kind of, going by the wayside in the NBA, but it's nice to be able to get buckets in there every once in a while. So I think his ability to get out of the break, his ability to switch defensively, this is kind of, to me, one of the safer players in the draft. You kind of know what you're getting out of Keegan Murray, and I think that's something that is going to appeal to the Pacers as they try to decide whether they're going to go into a full rebuild or whether they're going to continue to try to win. Keegan Murray fits both of those kind of ideologies.
Yeah, and Rick Carlisle teams, they believe in ball movement, player movement. He doesn't want to just play pick and roll all the time. So Keegan Murray fits into it because he's a pretty good passer out of the post. You still have to be able to post up a little bit. We saw that even in the playoffs. So he can post up. Obviously, he can shoot it. He averaged 23.5 points a game. So he's another switchable big on defense. You got to have bigs that can switch in defenses. You got to have bigs that can trap pick and rolls when they're on defense. So he'll fit right in to that Rick Carlisle as they try to rebuild this Indiana Pacers game. Obviously you won't have very far to travel. So this is a really solid, safe pick for the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, Keegan Murray has a ridiculous production profile and also a crazy trajectory as well. Just 2 years ago, this is a guy who averaged 7.2 points per game for Iowa. After signing with the program as a 3-star recruit, really didn't have a ton of options. Exploded last season, averaged 23.5 points per game, was one of the most productive players in all of college basketball. He was the first player last season and since 2008 to have at least 50 dunks and 50 threes in a single season. So that kind of gives you an idea of his profile and his production. He can play inside and out. He can space the floor as a three-point shooter, has good enough size. I think he's a true 4. His shooting, I think his defense, all of that's going to translate. He's going to be a really good NBA player. And I think next to Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana, this is a nice fit and a nice pairing, I think, with Keegan Murray and Tyrese Halliburton.
And Kyle, and to your point about that points per game jump, largest jump by a Big Ten player in 49 years. All right, let's go to pick 7. Portland, their highest pick in the draft in a decade. When they were this high the last time, they selected Damian Lillard. So Kyle, we go back to you. Make the pick for us.
I'm going to select Dyson Daniels out of the G League Ignite. This is a guy who was not really on the first-round radar even just 6 months ago, but really had a strong year with the G League Ignite. He's long, he's lanky, he's a really good defender and a creative passer as well. Someone who reminds me a little bit of Lonzo Ball, maybe not necessarily a primary initiator, but definitely a connector type. Someone who can keep the ball moving. He's very selfless. You're seeing here some of the highlights here. He obviously needs to improve his frame. He's a little bit on the lanky side, needs to get stronger, be a little bit better shooter. He was around 25% from three-point range last season, but a very versatile combo guard who I think can play multiple positions in the NBA. Will develop into a really good initiator. I've been really impressed kind of breaking down his tape and seeing some of the playmaking, the passing vision, I think is really special in that number 7. I think for a Portland franchise that is trying to rebuild, they're trying to add some talent, but they also want to kind of keep that win now window open with Dame Lillard. Dyson Daniels is kind of the best of both worlds for them.
All right, Pelicans now up with the 8th pick. So many questions about this team with Zion, obviously the center. Colin, you're on the clock.
Yeah, with the 8th pick, the Pelicans are going to take Jeremy Sohan out of Baylor. You look at the Pelicans roster and what they've been able to do by adding C.J. McCollum. They've got enough scoring between him, Brandon Ingram, and hopefully a healthy Zion Williamson. So Sohan, just probably the best defensive prospect in this draft. His ability to legitimately guard 1 through 5, which is so rare at the NBA level and so valuable. Adding him into that mix, being able to be a Swiss Army knife, play different positions. The word out of his workouts is that his three-point shooting is actually a little bit better than people expected. So you're not going to throw him out there shooting 8 or 9 threes a game, but if he can make one every once in a while, that'll help. You saw that kind of similar situation with Herb Jones last year on the Pelicans. He did enough offensively to keep him on the floor, and what he does defensively is just so unique. So you pair Herb Jones with Jeremy Sohan in some lineups, along with that scoring. I think the Pelicans have a really, really solid foundation, and you saw what they were able to do last year getting into the playoffs. The sky is going to be the limit if Zion Williamson can stay healthy and they add a guy like Sohan to help on defense.
Yeah, 8th in the Big 12 in rebounds per game last season, despite coming off the bench in all but one game. So that takes us to the 9th pick, which belongs to San Antonio. Avery, you know best when it comes to the Spurs. You're up.
Yeah, with the 9th pick, the San Antonio Spurs select Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. This would be an exciting pick for the Spurs if Johnny Davis is in this spot. This kid can score the basketball. You know, an ankle injury slowed him down towards the end of the season, but love his length, love how he would fit in to this Greg Popovich's offense, which could potentially be Greg Popovich's last year. I'm not breaking any news here, but obviously we know Coach Pop doesn't have much longer in his coaching career, but this kid he's a stud. And when you look at, consensus first team All-American, you look at the Spurs have drafted well historically, and they need to continue to add perimeter players that they can develop. Some of their players normally spend some time in the G League. I don't see Johnny spending that much time in the G League. I've seen him getting in the rotation, maybe not as a starter, but getting in the rotation from day one, because I think he's that elite of a talent.
Johnny Davis has had quite the journey to the NBA. Here's more on that with help from our friends at Jeep.
That's what the people don't see. All the hard hours put in. Get to the position I'm in right now. My goal is to just keep getting better every single day. Let me know if you ready to get dollars, we rolling down. I'm being the best player and person I can be. Born for greatness, man. Born for greatness, man. Hopefully be recognized as one of the greatest to play the game. My name is Johnny Davis and this is my story. I honestly don't remember how old I am in this. I'm pretty sure we were playing up a couple grades, but it shows you that I take basketball very seriously, even at a young age. First time I picked up a ball and started playing basketball was probably when I was 4 years old. I remember my dad took me and Jordan to the gym. There was a bunch of high schoolers working out, and we kind of just were on the side, just getting a feel for the game. Basketball was very fun for me. My dad, he had been in the league for about a year. He played basketball professionally for 13 years overseas. I remember him coaching us and, being really hard on us and yelling a lot, which is, I feel like the reason why we're as good as we are today. All the preparation, I think it'll pay off. Ain't no stopping us, we do the impossible. I always wanted to play professionally at the highest level. figured that if I wanted to be able to be in their position, I was going to have to work at an unbelievable rate. Trying to make sure that I'm enjoying the process I'm going through right now and just more focused on getting in the gym and getting better at my game as I possibly can. I've been working my whole life up until this point, and I'm just excited for my name to be called on draft night, but it's only the beginning.
Never let them see you sweat, buckle down, hustle hard, say my name with respect, never settle for a check if it mean losing rep.
I think I bring competitiveness, the way I play, the mentality, and how I approach the game. The main goal is to win as many games as possible, make it to the postseason, and win a championship. The individual accolades will come as well, but the main goal is just to win.
Johnny Davis at number 9 to San Antonio. As our mock draft continues, let's recap the picks so far. Jabari Smith Jr. became the 13th straight freshman selected first overall. That was followed by Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, and Jaden Ivey. Canadian Benedict Mathurin rounding out our top 5. We are on the clock here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE. 9 picks down, 21 to go. Here's who's been selected so far. Chet Holmgren was the consensus number 1 in the 5 previous mock drafts we've had here on the queue. Not today. Colin going another way to select Jabari Smith Jr. first overall. Holmgren falls to the 2 spot. Paolo Banchero goes 3rd with Jaden Ivey and Benedict Mathurin rounding out the top 5. All right, so let's get back into the picks here of our mock draft. Avery Johnson, college basketball writer Kyle Boone, as well as Colin Ward-Henninger here as we continue to make our mock draft picks just over 24 hours away from the start of the NBA draft. All right, the 10th pick belongs to the Wizards, Colin. Shaedon Sharpe still on the board as the number 6 overall prospect. So where are you heading?
To me, the Wizards go in a different direction here. With the 10th pick, they're going to take A.J. Griffin out of Duke. Some injury history, some concerns. If not for those, I think he probably would have gone higher in this draft and still might go higher in this draft. But just a tremendous shooter, shot at almost 45% on 4 attempts a game at Duke. Really a lot more to the package that he wasn't able to display because that Duke team was so talented. I think he fits in perfectly on this Wizards team. You look at Bradley Beal, you look at Kristaps Porzingis, he can slide right in there on the wing, not only as a shooter, as an outlet, but also as a guy who can be a secondary creator, attack closeouts. A.J. Griffin's a son of an NBA player and an NBA coach. He has that pedigree. He has that ability to get better. He has a ton of potential. He's only 18 years old. So I think he checks a lot of boxes for the Wizards here at number 10.
Wow, this is a pretty emotional pick for me with A.J. Griffin, because I remember babysitting him when he was 2 years old, when his dad played for me when I was coaching the Mavericks, and to see the type of athlete that he's grown into, and now he's going to be drafted with the 10th pick potentially in the NBA draft. Man, this is a really heartwarming story. I remember this kid running around in the gym, dribbling the basketball, and now to see him as a pro, this is phenomenal. But I love his skill set. I thought, against North Carolina in the Final Four, because he didn't have his best game shooting the basketball. That was one of the things that really limited Duke from taking that next step. But he can flat out shoot the ball. He's got an NBA body. I think his dad, Adrian Griffin, who obviously has not only been dad, but part-time coach. His mom has done a phenomenal job with him, raising him. I think this would be a sweet pick if he's paired with Bradley Beal in the backcourt.
Avery Johnson, coach, NBA champion, and babysitter, as we're learning here on CBS Sports HQ. All right, so Sharpe is still on the board. His draft position prop is at 7.5. Does he keep slipping past the Knicks? Kyle, you're on the clock.
He does not. The Knicks will happily scoop him up at number 11. Shaedon Sharpe, this feels like the floor for where Shaedon Sharpe will go. I'd be shocked if he fell out of the top 10, much less all the way to number 11, but Knicks fans have to be rejoicing if he falls this far. Shaedon Sharpe is the mystery man of this draft, right? This is a guy who spent last season at Kentucky Sitting on the sidelines. He did not play at all, but we know the pedigree that Shaedon Sharpe brings to the table is very, very impressive. He's the former #1 recruit in his class. He reclassified, enrolled at Kentucky at the mid-year point, didn't play, obviously, but has a great frame. He's a very explosive athlete, really dynamic shot maker. There's so many questions surrounding him. We haven't seen him since high school when he played on the Nike EYBL circuit, but the size, the athleticism, the scoring ability, the fact that he was at one time the #1 recruit in his class, I think all bodes well for his prospects to translate to the NBA level. There's obviously a lot of questions surrounding, the fact that we haven't seen him in so long, but I think at number 11 for the Knicks, the value proposition is too good to pass up here.
Yeah, and if you look at the Knicks, they've been craving someone who can just go out and get their own shot. I think Knicks fans must be sick of watching Julius Randle step back mid-range jumpers. Finally, you can get a guard who can put the ball on the floor, create a shot for himself, maybe eventually be able to create shots for others. As Boone said, I think this is just too good to pass up for the Knicks. When you look at Sharpe, obviously a ton of questions because we don't know a lot about him. We haven't seen him play basketball outside of AAU and stuff like that. But when you look at the Knicks, an organization that, it looked like they were trying to take the next step forward in terms of winning. Last year, it was definitely a setback. I think they might be retooling and saying, hey, look, maybe we need to start planning for the future a little bit more than the present. And a guy like Sharpe is a perfect way to start that off.
And we haven't maybe seen him play, but his head coach saw him every day in practice putting in the work. John Calipari saying he's a player with a ton of upside who's put in the work to get to where he is. Okay, let's go to number 12. We see the Thunder for their second pick of the first round. Coach, who are you pairing up with Chet Holmgren?
With the 12th pick, the Thunder selects Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas. I think this is a great pick to pair up with Chet Holmgren. Agbaji, I had a chance to really study his game this year. This is a 6'5" athlete. And, man, he can flat out shoot the basketball. I think he's going to be a lockdown defender on the perimeter. But, again, if he can last until the 12th pick, this would be a steal to pair him up, play some pick and roll with Chet Holmgren. Chet can even handle the ball. He can be the screener in an inverted pick and roll situation. But this kid was, he was a 2022, Final Four most outstanding player for a reason. He came through. He got his team off to some really incredible starts by making a couple of threes, especially in the semifinal game, to start those games. And again, to be able to be a live guy, this would be a sweet pick if he lasts this long on the board at number 12.
Yeah, number 12, taking Ochai Agbaji, would absolutely hate it if I'm the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think this is a very safe pick. You know what he's going to be, which is kind of a 3-and-D player. He's proven he can shoot it at a high level. He's a really good defender. He played 4 years in college, so he can play defense. He played for Bill Self. He was one of the best players in college basketball last season. But there are so many different prospects that are still available on the board that I think if you're OKC and you're rebuilding, would prefer maybe you take some swings. Guys like Tari Eason, Malachi Branham, Jalen Duren still on the board. Ochai Agbaji is definitely going to be a good NBA player. Would be more comfortable, though, I think, taking him outside the lottery, maybe in like the 15 to 20 range, especially if you're OKC, just knowing that you're basically in a full rebuild mode at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I like Agbaji as a player, but as Boone said, I'm not in love with the fit with the Thunder. But if you look at it, they can't just keep taking 18-year-old projects, right? They have to be able to put guys on the floor who can play. And if they think Agbaji is the best guy on their board in this spot, they just have to take the best talent. You look at the size, the speed, the quickness, the athleticism, and the ability to shoot the ball. You look at what type of players are succeeding in the NBA right now. Agbaji just checks all the boxes, and he's a winner. I think this is a good pick in the draft. I'm not sure for the Thunder, but if they believe he's the best prospect on their board at this point, I think it makes sense for them to just go ahead and take him.
Agbaji set a Kansas school record by making at least one three-pointer in 53 consecutive games. So when he's on the floor and you see his player prop at 1.5 in terms of made threes, you take the over. All right, Charlotte still looking for a head coach, but they have 2 of the next 3 picks here. Defensive versatility listed as one of their big needs. So what do they do in this spot, Colin?
Yeah, you talk about defensive versatility. The Hornets are going to take Jalen Duren, one of the best big man prospects in this draft. You look at his wingspan, 7'5", just absolutely incredible. You think of what he's going to be able to do with his athleticism on the other side of a LaMelo Ball lob, being able to finish at the rim. And then on the other side, he has his ability to block shots with that wingspan. You don't want to make too big a comp, but you look at a guy like Robert Williams, who we got to see with the Celtics in the postseason. Not the tallest guy in the world. He's not a 7-footer, but because of that length and that shot blocking ability, absolutely changes games. I think, the Hornets have been in the market for a center for a very long time. And I think that if they're not able to make a trade for one, Duren makes a whole lot of sense to put on that team with the other athletes around him.
All right, let's go to the last lottery pick, number 14, the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of their 3 picks in this draft. Roster flaws really showed last season when injuries hit. So, Kyle, you're on the clock. Make the pick for us.
Yeah, I'm going to select Tari Eason out of LSU at number 14. They've got foundational pieces with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I'm going to add someone who I think can play the 3 and the 4 for me at the next level. And Tari Eason, I think, is one of the most dynamic defensive prospects in this draft class. I think there's some questions about his offensive projection to the next level, which I get. I think his catch and shoot numbers are not overwhelmingly good, but he is a dynamic defender who to me is kind of like a Jeremy Sohan light in this draft. Can guard multiple positions, really a true playmaker on defense, averaged nearly 2 steals per game. He also shot 36% from 3 last season, so I don't think the shot is totally broken either. This is a guy who I think can be a role player. At number 14 in this draft, I feel pretty good about grabbing Tari Eason here for the Cavs.
Eason improved his scoring average by 9.6 points to 16.9 points per game after going from Cincinnati to LSU. A nice jump there. Kyle Boone, Colin Ward-Henninger, and Avery Johnson on the clock for us as we mock draft for the final time ahead of the NBA draft in just over 24 hours. All right, let's recap what we've had so far. Jabari Smith, the current favorite to go number 1 overall, heads to the Magic, followed by Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, and Jaden Ivey. We just saw picks 10 through 14 come off the board. A.J. Griffin at 10 to the Wizards, followed by Shaedon Sharpe to the Knicks. O.J. Obaji goes to the Thunder, Jalen Duren to the Hornets, Tari Eason to the Cavaliers.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.